They said he was the saddest horse anyone had ever seen at an auction. Men laughed and shook their heads, calling him a waste of space and feed. But in less than half an hour, that same horse would do something that would make every man standing in that dusty yard question everything they thought they knew about broken spirits. The morning sun beat down on the auction yard as Silas Ward leaned against a weathered fence, watching the crowd gather around the livestock pens. Dust hung thick in the air, kicked up by restless horses and scuffed boots. The smell of hay, sweat, and dry earth filled his lungs. Silas had been coming to auctions like this for most of his life, and he had learned to read horses the way some men read books. Every animal told a story if you knew how to look. That was when he saw him. In the far corner pen stood a black Mustang who seemed to carry the weight of the world on his shoulders. His head hung so low his muzzle nearly brushed the dirt. His coat was black as midnight, but dull, stripped of any shine. His ribs showed faintly beneath the skin. Yet it was not his body that caught Silas's attention. It was the stillness. While other horses paced, snorted, and tested the rails, this one did nothing at all. He stood like he had already accepted whatever was coming. Otis Caldwell, the auctioneer, was already calling out lot numbers, his voice rolling across the yard like a drumbeat. Buyers moved from pen to pen, running hands along flanks and checking teeth. When they reached the black Mustang's pen, most did not stop. A few glanced inside, frowned, and moved on. Silas pushed himself off the fence and stepped closer. The horse did not lift his head. He did not pin his ears or shift his weight. Up close, Silas noticed scars along the Mustang's neck and shoulders. Not the kind left by cruelty, but the kind earned through hard living and survival. "You would not waste your money on that one," a voice said behind him. Mercy Whitmore, his neighbor, stood with her arms crossed, wearing the same look she always did when offering advice no one asked for. "That horse is finished. Broken clean through. Probably has not lifted his head in weeks." Silas did not answer right away. He watched the horse breathe. Slow, even, controlled. The ears drooped, but they flicked now and then, catching sounds from across the yard. Most of all, Silas noticed the hooves. They were not splayed or careless. They were planted firm, balanced, like the horse was ready to move if he chose to. "Sometimes," Silas said quietly, "the ones that look the most broken are just the ones that learn to wait." Mercy scoffed. The auctioneer's voice grew louder as he approached the pen. "Next up, Lot 17, black Mustang, about 8 years old." "As is, where is?" The bidding started slow and weak. A few half-hearted calls came from the back. The horse did not react. Silas waited, his eyes never leaving the animal. "Do I hear $50? Otis called. Silence. 40? Silas raised his hand. 50. Mercy grabbed his arm. "Silas, you have lost your mind." Another voice called out 60. Frank Morrison, known for buying cheap horses and working them hard, shook his head when Silas countered with 75. Frank walked away, done with it. 75, going once, Otis called. That was when it happened. For a moment so brief most people missed it, the black Mustang lifted his head and looked straight at Silas. Their eyes met across the yard. In that instant, Silas felt his breath stop. There was no emptiness in those eyes, no defeat. There was sharp awareness, deep and burning, hidden behind a mask of surrender. The gavel came down. Sold. As the crowd drifted toward the next pen, Silas stayed where he was. The horse lowered his head again, returning to his lifeless pose. Mercy walked off, shaking her head, muttering about wasted money. But Silas saw one last thing. When no one else was watching, the Mustang shifted his weight and turned his body slightly toward the gate, not away, toward it. He was not giving up. He was waiting. And Silas had the strong feeling that whatever this horse was waiting for was about to change both of their lives forever. The rope felt heavier than it should have as Silas Ward walked toward the pen gate. He had handled hundreds of horses over the years, but his hands were steadier than usual now, not from fear, but from respect. The black Mustang still stood with his head low, playing the same tired role, yet Silas could feel the awareness beneath it like heat under ash. "Easy," Silas said softly as he opened the gate. The horse flicked one ear, that was all. Silas stepped inside, moving slow, giving the animal space. Other horses nearby stamped and snorted, but this one stayed still, like stone carved into the shape of a horse. When Silas slipped the rope halter over his head, there was no resistance, no pullback, no panic. The Mustang followed when Silas asked him to move, his steps smooth and balanced, nothing like a broken animal. People laughed as they walked past. "There goes Ward with his charity case. Might as well drag home a shadow." Silas ignored them. He watched the way the horse walked, even stride. Strong back. Calm breathing. The eyes looked dull to anyone not paying attention, but Silas noticed how they tracked movement, counted distance, measured space. At the wagon, Silas lowered the tailgate. Most horses needed coaxing. This one stepped up without hesitation, placing his hooves perfectly for balance. Silas paused, studying him. "You have done this before," he said quietly. The ride home was slow, the wagon wheels creaked. Silas's riding horse plodded along. Every so often Silas glanced back and caught the Mustang lifting his head just enough to study the land, memorizing the path, the fences, the hills. A broken horse did not bother to learn. At the ranch, Silas led him into an empty stall. The moment they crossed the barn door, something changed. For a heartbeat, the horse lifted his head fully. His ears snapped forward. His eyes swept the barn with sharp focus, like a man walking into unfamiliar territory. Then, just as fast, the mask dropped back into place. Silas filled the trough and laid fresh hay. The horse drank deeply, but not in a rush. He ate slowly, never turning his back on the stall door. That night, Silas did not sleep well. 3 days passed. The Mustang barely touched the grain Silas offered. He drank water. He ate hay. The oats sat untouched, growing stale. Mercy Whitmore noticed right away. "That horse is starving himself," she said, peering into the stall. "You bought yourself a slow death, Silas." Silas shook his head. "He is choosing not to eat it." "Choosing?" Mercy laughed. "Horses do not choose." But Silas had started to notice things. The hay was always scattered by morning. The water level dropped far more than it should have. And the horse always stood still when anyone was watching. That evening, Silas stayed in the barn. He tucked himself behind stacked hay bales, where he could see the stall but not be seen. The Mustang stood motionless for a long time, head down, shoulders slumped. Then, the night settled. The horse lifted his head. His ears came forward, alert and sharp. He moved to the stall door and examined the latch, nudging it with careful precision. Silas felt his chest tighten. The horse could open it. He was certain. But the Mustang stepped back. He began to move along the stall's edge, checking boards, corners, shadows. He walked like a guard on patrol, confident, quiet, a far cry from the lifeless thing shown at the auction. Then he approached the grain. He sniffed it, listened, took measured bites, stopping often to scan the barn. He ate like a soldier who expected trouble. Silas shifted his weight. A piece of hay rustled. The Mustang snapped toward the sound, his body coiling tight, powerful, ready to strike or flee. For one raw second, Silas saw the truth. Strength, intelligence, control. Then the act returned. Head down, stillness. Silas left the barn shaken. He was not sheltering a broken horse. He was sheltering a secret. The answer came at dawn. Young Tommy Chen rode into the yard hard and fast, his horse slick with sweat, his face pale. "Mr. Ward!" he shouted. "They took my pa." Silas was at the barn door in seconds. Who took him? 3 men, maybe 4. They said they were looking for someone. When Pa said he did not know, they tied him up and rode toward Dead Man's Canyon. Silas felt cold settle in his gut. "They were asking about a horse," Tommy added. "A black one." Silas turned slowly toward the barn. The Mustang stood watching him, head high now, no mask left to hide behind. Old rope burns circled his neck, marks of hard hands and harder purpose. "So that is it," Silas said softly. "You were not lost. You were hiding." The horse stepped closer to the stall door. "They want you back," Silas went on. "Bad enough to hurt innocent folk to get you." The sound of distant hoofbeats rolled across the land. Coming fast. Silas had minutes. Run and be caught. Hide and let others suffer. Or stand. The Mustang reared suddenly, letting out a sound that was not fear but challenge. It echoed through the barn like thunder. Silas opened the stall. The black horse burst out, no hesitation, no confusion. He positioned himself beside the mounting block and stood still. No saddle, no bridle. Silas swung onto his bare back. The horse surged forward like black lightning, not away from danger, but straight toward it. And Silas understood. This horse was done hiding. And whatever waited ahead, they would face it together. Dead Man's Canyon waited ahead like a long red wound cut deep into the earth. Sterling ran straight into it without slowing, his hooves striking stone with perfect precision. The narrow walls rose on both sides, echoing every sound, making the hoofbeats behind them sound like a stampede. Silas kept his hands buried in the horse's mane, trusting the Mustang more than he trusted his own judgment. "How do you know this place?" Silas whispered. Sterling's only answer was to run faster, taking sharp turns as if he had memorized the canyon years before. They burst into a wide clearing carved naturally into the rock. In the center, tied to a dead pine, sat Tommy Chen's father. His head snapped up in disbelief as Sterling slid to a halt beside him. "Mr. Ward," Chen gasped. "How did you find?" But Sterling was already shifting, placing his body between Chen and the entrance to the canyon. Silas jumped down and worked the knots loose as fast as his hands allowed. "We need to move," Chen warned. "There are more men. They split up to corner you." The warning came too late. Riders appeared at both ends of the canyon, 7 in total, armed, coordinated, moving like men who knew exactly what they wanted. The scarred leader from the auction sat tall in his saddle, a smile pulling at his ruined cheek. "End of the line, Ward. Nowhere left to run. Hand over the horse and maybe we let you walk out." "Let us walk out," Chen muttered. "They're lying." Silas knew it too. But Sterling was already stepping into the center of the clearing. The Mustang stood perfectly still, balanced, collected. His head lifted high, eyes burning with something sharp and familiar, memory. Then he began to move. It wasn't a panic dance or a frightened shuffle. It was a controlled pattern, a deliberate sequence of steps, spins, and light-footed circles. The canyon floor became a stage. The riders slowed, confused. Silas felt chills crawl down his arms. "He's performing," the scarred man said proudly. 3 years of training, every move perfect. Every action drilled into him until his spirit snapped. At those words, Sterling changed. His movement sharpened, grew stronger, heavier, filled with something that was no longer performance. His ears pinned straight at the scarred man. His muscles tensed like coiled wire. Silas saw it happen. "You made one mistake," Silas said, eyes locked on the scarred leader. "You broke him down, but you didn't break his mind." Sterling stopped. The canyon went silent. Then the black Mustang screamed. It was not a whinny. It was not fear. It was a war cry that echoed off the canyon walls like a thunderstorm. And then he moved. What happened next looked impossible. Sterling shot across the clearing like a streak of night. He struck the first rider with a shoulder slam that sent the man tumbling from his saddle. He spun, kicked, and dodged with speed no horse should possess. 2 more riders tried to block him. Sterling dropped low, sliding across the gravel, then shot upward in a tight turn that scattered both horses. But Sterling wasn't attacking blindly. Every move was controlled. Every hit was planned. Every step was placed to keep Silas and Chen out of harm's way. The scarred man cursed and drew his pistol. "Sterling!" he shouted. The horse reacted like lightning. Silas felt the air shift as Sterling pivoted, hooves striking the ground in a perfect stop that made the man's shot fly wide. Before the scarred man could adjust, Sterling lunged, knocking the weapon from his hand with a strike so precise it looked like something practiced 1,000 times. The man pulled a knife and charged. Silas moved a step forward, but Sterling was faster. The Mustang twisted away from the blade, then swept his powerful neck into the man's chest, sending him crashing to the ground. Weapons clattered across stone. The other horses panicked. They sensed Sterling's dominance, and instead of fighting, they fell away from their riders, refusing commands, refusing the bit, refusing the battle. The men were finished. It was the horses who surrendered first. Sheriff Morrison rode into the canyon just as the last rider fell. 3 deputies and young Tommy followed close behind. The sheriff reined in hard, staring at the sight before him. "In 30 years," he said slowly, "I have never seen anything like that." His eyes went to Sterling, who now stood calm and steady, sides heaving but eyes bright with victory. "Those men kidnapped Chen," Silas said. "They came for Sterling. They used force to try to take him back. The deputies rounded up the men who were too bruised, winded, or terrified to resist. Their own horses still gravitated toward Sterling, unable to break whatever hold he had on them." "You paid $75 for that horse," Chen said, shaking his head in amazement. $75 for a fighter that took down 7 armed men. Silas placed a hand on Sterling's neck. Warm muscle rolled beneath the dark coat. "I didn't buy a fighter," Silas said quietly. "I bought a soul that refused to break." Sheriff Morrison nodded. "Whatever that horse used to be, he belongs here now, with you." The sun climbed higher as they left the canyon. Tommy rode beside his father. The deputies led the captured men. Silas rode Sterling with a quiet pride he had not felt in years. When they reached the ridge above the valley, Sterling paused. He looked back toward the canyon, the place where he had been broken, hunted, and nearly taken again. Then he turned away from it. Toward home. Toward freedom. Toward Silas. The saddest horse in the auction yard had proven something no one expected. Not that he was strong. Not that he was trained. Not that he was a fighter. But that sometimes the most broken-looking spirit is the one waiting for the right person to believe in it. And when that happens, the whole world changes.